Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Ariana, but I go by REX on the channel, and today I'm here to tell you how I got into some pretty good law schools with scholarship money. So just for a little bit of background, I am committed to Fordham University School of Law in New York. I got my acceptance back in January. I applied around the late October time. So that's when I applied. I got in December and I got a scholarship in January. So I am first gen, everything. So this process was like way harder for me, but obviously if I can do it, you can do it too. Another thing before I start, obviously like applying to law school is a case-by-case thing. So you can't do everything that I did in my application and just expect to get in. I can't do everything the next person did. You know what I mean? So don't think that you have to check off a list on everything that I'm saying in here to get in. It's not like that. So you can't replicate an application to get in. This is just a case-by-case thing. This is what I did, and these are some tips that I'm gonna share. Okay, so a complete application to law school starts with about like 5 main things. I'll get into some other things later, but the 5 main things that you need are your undergraduate GPA, your LSAT score, your personal statement, your resume, and 2 or 3 letters of recommendation. There's other things like diversity statements, why X schools, but I'll get into that later. Okay, so we're gonna start with the GPA, which is pretty basic. Your undergraduate GPA. Law schools kind of look at your graduate GPA. But they don't weigh it as heavily as your undergraduate GPA because that's what they can measure everybody on, because everybody had to go to undergrad to go to law school. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty basic. Just get the best grades you can. Don't think that you have to major in like political science or pre-law or what's another one, like liberal studies, that type of stuff, to get into law school. There's no prerequisites for law school. So if you want to major in like engineering or dance or English, like, you know, stuff like that, that's cool as long as it interests you and you do well in it. So make sure that you're doing well in your classes. Personally, my GPA was a 3.8, but when you apply through LSAT, they'll kind of like, I don't know how to describe it, but like not change your grades, but my school doesn't have an A+, so they kind of changed my GPA. It's hard to explain. Anyways, I ended up applying with a 3.86, which looked a little bit better. So I had a 3.86 GPA. I was also an honor student, and I was on like a department scholarship, so I feel like that kind of looks good as far as my grades go. So yeah, essentially just get good grades. I know it sucks, but like it is what it is. Okay, so next we're gonna get into the LSAT, which is my least favorite part of the application. It was my weakest part of my application, but it's okay because I still got into good schools with scholarships with a score that I wasn't necessarily happy with. I didn't do terrible, but I didn't do as good as I wanted to. So you can take this advice from me, but take it with a grain of salt. Yeah, first of all, black people are consistently scoring lower on these tests, and that should tell you something. I can't believe as a first gen people have the resources to take off a year of work and not have any bills, or not in school and just studying full time. Like, it's wild to me. And they're like spending thousands of dollars on prep courses. Like, that's unheard of. But I digress. Anyways, so what I did, I took a huge sacrifice, y'all. Like, broke ramen noodles, tuna sandwiches, broke. It was the summer of my junior year, summer after my junior year. I had no job, no internship, and I went to my school's library every day, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and I self-studied using PowerScore. I have a video to how I got like a lot of free resources, so if you check that out, I'm not gonna point because I don't know how to do that, but there's a video on my channel of how I got a whole bunch of free LSAT tools with my fee waiver, so go check that out. So regardless, I did somewhat good on the LSAT. I didn't do great, but I did okay enough to get me into good schools. Wow. So focus on your LSAT as much as you can. Try to take a prep course if you can afford it. Try to use all the resources that I have in my video if you can't afford it, but really try to do well. No, I'm not gonna tell you my LSAT score. I know, surprise. But like I said, you can't just replicate an application. So do your best, and whatever your best is gonna get you into a good school because I believe in you. Okay, actually, I won't tell you my exact score, but just know it was below Fordham's median. Like, that's the school that I've committed to. So just know that the school that I committed to, that I got into, my score was below there. So apply to whatever you want. Moving on to the next component of your application, which is your personal statement. My personal statement, I feel like this is what got me into a lot of good schools. I mean, obviously I don't know what admissions officers thought, but I think that my story was very compelling. So I think this was like this kind of overcompensated for my LSAT, because I had like a weaker LSAT score. So I think that my writing and my personal statement kind of helped my application in a sense. Basically, your personal statement is just like a why you want to go to law school, why this fits into your life, your journey, why you want to be a lawyer, things like that. So it's about 2 to 3 pages. Some schools have different requirements, so pay attention to that. But mine was about, I'm not gonna read it because it would take forever, but just know, like, I had a story that only I could tell. Like, no one else can write that personal statement and like submit it, you know what I mean? Because I'm the one who went through it. So make sure that your personal statement is really personal to you. That's why it's personal statement, personal, you know what I mean? So make sure that your personal statement is personal to you and only you can tell that story, and it fits into why you want to go to law school. Example, my personal statement had to do with my family and what we went through. You know, we really needed a lawyer, or what me and my siblings went through, and why having a lawyer would be, you know, beneficial. A lot of people can't tell that story, you know what I mean? Like, people probably can, but they can't tell it how I told it. The thing that I would say is that a lot of times people write personal statements and they kind of trauma dump on you, and it is important to tell a compelling story, but keep in mind that your personal statement is an academic piece of writing. So show them your story, but also let them know that you know how to write professionally, and you can tell your story, and you can get your point across without just having them break down and cry. Or don't let it be too disturbing. Tell your story, but keep it an academic piece of writing. So my personal statement was just a little over 2 pages. I think 1 paragraph went onto the 3rd page. That's what I recommend. I think 2 pages is good. If it goes onto the 3rd page, that's fine, but try to keep it there. Again, law schools, certain schools have requirements, so it might be one that's like 1 page, it might be one that's 2 pages, so just make sure you pay attention to that. But make sure you tell a compelling story that's personal to you and it's still a good academic piece of writing. Okay, moving on to the 4th piece, which is your resume. I also think that my resume was a pretty good boost to my application. It listed like a lot of things, but I really specifically talked about my impact in these positions. So when you describe your job and your role, make sure you describe the impact that you had on these places. I think that my resume was such a boost because it showed all of my experiences, but it showed how, like, it showed that my experiences were a part of my life or my story and my major. So it kind of all made sense. Don't just think that if you're an engineering major, you need to work at a law firm, or if you're an engineering major, you need to work for Congress, you know what I mean? Do things that just fit your story and your preference, because it will show better in your application, if that makes sense. I hope I'm making sense. I don't know. Also remember that jobs don't make you an automatic fit into law school. Like, it doesn't work like that. You can't go out and get these jobs that I had and think, oh, I'm automatic shoo-in to this school. It doesn't work like that. You can't replicate an application. It's all about your unique experience. Like I said, I recommend talking about your impact in these experiences. I personally worked on Capitol Hill. I worked for a congressman. I worked in a district attorney's office in a county here in North Carolina. What else did I do? I was like attorney general, you know, like things that they fit my major because I was a political science and pre-law major. So that type of stuff makes sense for me to work on the Capitol or work for a DA or at a law firm. That stuff makes sense. So that's a lot of the things that were on my resume. I was also active in NBOLSA, which is National Black Law Students Association. I was in student government for like 3 years. I was chief of staff. I was attorney general and a lot of other things. I was in the honors program. So things like that that show academic, I guess my experiences showed that I could write well, or that I knew what I was doing in certain political and legal spaces. But you don't have to do that. Like I said, if you're like a dance major, do something really good with dance. You know what I mean? You don't have to, y'all get what I'm trying to say. Okay, your last major thing, which is your letters of recommendation. I think that this is a really slept on piece of your application because there are people that get to speak on your behavior and your impact and your character, and I think that's really important, and law schools want to see that you have good character and that you're willing to persevere, things like that. I was grateful enough to have all 3 of my recommenders be attorneys. One was a judge, so 2 attorneys and a judge. But like I said, I'm first gen everything. There's no lawyers in my family, so I made these connections, and like I have a good relationship with them now. It's recommended that you have one academic source or academic recommender, so like a professor or like a teacher, an old high school teacher maybe a boss from like work experience. So I used my district attorney that I worked for. He was my boss recommender. I cannot read a book. Oh my gosh, like my vocabulary is so bad. A DA was my professional recommender. My professor, who was also a judge, happened to be able to speak on my academic performance, and just, you know, she was a judge, so I thought, look. And also my school's dean of students, he also has his JD, so I was close with him when I was attorney general, and all of these people got to speak on my work ethic. So my professor, who was a judge, she spoke on how I was a good student. I was like, you know, good to my classmates, whatever. I was all that academic stuff, and like I did well in her class, obviously. The dean of students, I worked with him as attorney general, so he knew a lot of my work ethic at school and like what I did with student government, which was like a highlight. And one of the district attorneys that I worked for, he spoke on my work experience and how I was in an office and how I'm professional and things like that. So make sure that you have those people really speak well for you and speak about your impact and how they made you feel. That's really important. So a major thing is, don't go to like the highest person that you know. Let's say like your mom knows a congressman, which who mom know a congressman? Like that's only in certain, like if you're a first gen, your mom don't know no congressman. But anyways, let's just say that your mom or your dad knew a congressman. Don't go and get them to write you a letter of recommendation because they don't know you that well. You know what I mean? It didn't make sense for me to ask the congressman that I worked for a letter of recommendation because I had only been working for him for like 2 months by the time I was applying to law school. You know what I mean? Make sure that these people know you and they know you well. I knew all of my recommenders for like 2+ years. They could speak on my experience as I've grown. So get somebody that really knows you. It doesn't matter who it is, just make sure that they can speak to your experience. So that was pretty much all of the basics that you need to apply to law school and essentially do like have a good application. Some other things, I wrote a why for them. I think they had a why for them essay, and I wrote an extra essay saying why for them. So in my personal statement, I wrote a little bit about how, like, remember I said it was my family, like I wrote a little bit about my family, so I wrote about the Fordham's Family Law Clinic. So I wrote about that in my personal statement, but in my why Fordham statement, I went into detail about that. I went into detail about what I knew about the program, why that program will be a good fit for me, the proximity of how close certain things are, things like that, because law schools really want to see why you're interested in their school. Don't just apply, like don't send a basic application to every single school. Make sure that you're tweaking your application so that the schools know you're interested in them. I need to do better. But yeah, also I wrote a diversity statement, which I mean, I'm a black woman, so obviously that's diversity, but I also applied to HBCU law school, so like Howard, Central. Did I apply anywhere else? I might have did FAMU. I don't know. But I'm applying to HBCU law schools as well, and being a black woman doesn't cut it for diversity. So what I did in my diversity statement, I showed that not only am I a black woman, but I have unique experiences being a black woman. So I'll give you like what my diversity statement was about. So I personally was raised by my father for a little bit of time. You know what I mean? And in the black community, how common is it to be raised by a single black parent? You know what I mean? It's a little different. So I recommend you talking about your experiences and how that makes you diverse. Like no one else can tell that story. They kind of, you know what I mean? Like they can, but like nobody has a story like I have. That's what makes my application so unique. So I recommend that, like, make sure your diversity statement is unique. Make sure you write a why certain school essay, and I think that really shows like your willingness or your grit to go to that certain school. So in all, the stuff that I put in my application got me to some great law schools. I got into some good law schools with scholarship money. So take my advice with a grain of salt, but also know this is not just a checklist type of thing. You can't just check off everything that I said and think that's an automatic fit in for law school. It's not. Make sure that you do your best, get good grades, get a good LSAT score, make great relationships with your recommenders who write your letters. There we go. What else? Write a personal statement and try to curate your resume that fits you and makes sense to you. If you're first gen like me, this process is going to be really hard. I'm not gonna lie to you, it was hard. I was crying, losing weight, like, but okay. Anyways, this process is gonna be hard. Make sure you have people that you can lean on for support during this time, because not only is it hard applying to law school, but the waiting game is hard as well. And getting acceptances and rejections and wait lists is also hard. So make sure you have a support system in this whole thing. Make sure you get people to read over your application, especially your personal statement. If you hand someone your personal statement and they say, oh, it looks fine, and they give it back to you with no corrections, they're not helping you. Go find somebody else who's gonna write it up, and it needs to be all in red. There needs to be highlights and red ink everywhere, because you really want to have the best writing piece that you can. It was a stressful time, honestly. I hate talking about it, but like, you know, I'm always here to help. If you want to DM me, my Instagram is ArianaX. I'll put it somewhere around here. But please know that you're gonna do great, and I believe in you, and you can get into good schools like Fordham, Georgetown. You can get into Harvard, okay, period, with a scholarship. They don't do that, but you can be the first, you know what I mean, because I believe in you. So yeah, thank you guys for watching this video. I hope this video helped. Check out my other videos on law school and tell me what other law school videos you want in the comments.